Will 2022 be the year of the biggest real estate market crash ever? Please keep watching and you'll find out. If you're new to the channel, my name is Igoe. I'm a full-time, full-service realtor with an all-star team that services all of South Florida. I put out content on a weekly basis, and on a monthly basis, I make it a priority to come to you with our monthly market report in order to give you insight and all the information to make the best decisions for yourself, for your family, and for your financial bottom line. Right now, there is so much confusion and noise that's out there in the media and really everywhere that I feel it's my duty to share what's truly happening in the real estate market across the country and specifically in South Florida. It's important as we get started to share some information with you in order to give you some perspective. So this first graphic is from Showing Time. That Showing Time software gives us real-time information as to the amount of showings that happen on a daily basis in real time. Now I can get hyper-local on this, and I can also go macro in order to show you a national perspective too. Now we use Showing Time as a leading indicator in real estate as to what's happening relative to activity. Now, in the event you're not familiar with that term, a leading indicator can help predict an event. A lagging indicator will confirm what's already happened. And if you look at this graphic going all the way back to January, you can see clearly that there's a big dip down during the pandemic lockdown, and then you can also see that shoot right back up. And that's when there was a lot of business in the first part of this year. There were a tremendous amount of home sales and lots of action. And now you can see we're starting to level off a bit. Now I've used this Showing Time graphic before in other videos, and I used it to illustrate the point. Look, we're ahead of where we were this time last year. And you can see the yellow line there. This time in this graphic, we're slightly below where we were this time last year. September is the most recent data that we have. Now you may ask yourself, why is this important? Well, because there are a lot of people that are out there wondering, is the market starting to slow down? Is it leveling off or starting to level out? Or is it the beginning of the end? Is the market about to crash? No, it's not. I want to look at this objectively and see what's happening relative to 2020, because right now, having perspective is key. So I pulled the Showing Time data going all the way back to 2017. And what do you see? 2017, 2018, 2019, probably the most normal markets that we have to look at. And then of course we've got the pandemic in 2020, which certainly was not a normal market. The chart doesn't lie. We're coming off of where we were at this time last year. But we're also well ahead of where we were in the years coming into 2020. So why is this important? Well, first, let's own it. Yes, we're starting to see the market level off a little bit from there. We're starting to normalize, but we're also well ahead of where we were coming into the pandemic, which I think is very, very important perspective to have. And it's even more important now because many people are out there thinking, well, wow, things are starting to slow down. And maybe you've talked about this with other people, or you've seen it on other content on YouTube or in the news. And everybody's talking about what's happening out there in the market. No doubt, every market in the country could use more inventory. Almost every market across the country has more buyers than sellers. And obviously, we would all like to see more inventory come onto the market to satisfy that demand. I'd like to give you some perspective from an analyst, Bill McBride of Calculated Risk. And he said this: sales, non-seasonally adjusted in September, were 548,000. That was 2.7% below sales in September of 2020, which was 563,000. But excluding September, which was obviously distorted by the delayed selling season, sales, non-seasonally adjusted, were the strongest since 2005. So let me ask you a question. Have you heard anybody out there talking about that? Is anybody talking about the fact that home sales are very, very good? Well, there's a few, but certainly not a lot. And you're certainly not hearing that on the media or on YouTube or really anywhere else. And it's my responsibility to always present the best real-time information so that you can make the best decisions for yourself, for your family, and for your financial bottom line. I think we all know that headlines do more to terrify these days than they do to clarify what's actually going on. The clickbait that's out there about real estate and many other things meant to mislead people. Perhaps you've heard the term fake news. It's possible that the article or the content is factual, but it's got an alarming clickbait headline. The reality is most people don't take the time to actually read the article, and they make an assumption off of what they saw in the headline. And they get scared or confused, and people who are scared or confused tend to freeze. That fear is what I want to dispel. I don't want anyone to be frozen and cancel their plans to buy or sell real estate based on misinformation or being outright lied to. And to illustrate this, I'd like to share a couple of articles that are circulating right now. Foreclosures are shooting up. Is this a repeat of the early 2000s housing crisis? This is a real headline, and we can expect to see more of it. Now, here's the real facts that are actually in the article if you take the time to read it. Foreclosure starts were up 49% last month, according to ATTOM data, and that is factually true. It's also nowhere near where we were in 2019, which was a more normal market. It's obvious to expect that foreclosures are going to be up as the moratoriums have been lifted. And you can expect to see that number go higher as we move forward, but nowhere near the volume of what we saw pre-pandemic. You can expect to see more of that as we go into next year. There are going to be those that were affected by the pandemic and the moratoriums being lifted. But this sort of headline, this clickbait headline, which comes from Realtor.com, is BS when you add in some historical perspective. But when people see headlines like this, they get scared, they get concerned, they don't take action and move forward. Similarly, CNBC came out and said, this is the actual headline, mortgage originations will drop by 33% in 2022 as interest rates rise, according to industry forecast. Now that's a scary headline, but most people don't take the time to read into the article. If you did read it, what they actually go on to say is that refinance originations will drop 62% to $860 billion in 2022. Well, that makes sense. We're in a rising interest rate environment. And as interest rates rise, it's obvious we're going to see less refinances. However, they go on to say that mortgage originations for the purpose of buying a home are forecasted to rise 9% to a record $1.73 trillion next year. So that headline doesn't do really anything to inform the buyer or lead them down the right path. It's intended to scare the hell out of you. You have to actually go into the article, and most people don't take the time to do that. There's a saying, if it bleeds, it leads, and because of this fear-mongering, we're seeing folks freeze and get paralyzed by that analysis. People are now afraid. They don't know if it's a good time to buy. And they don't know if it's a good time to move forward with their real estate plans. And so they get scared, they don't do it. My responsibility is to bring you the truth so that you can inform yourself and make the best decisions for yourself and your family. Now, if you find this content valuable, please subscribe to the channel and like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you've got questions or fears or really anything that you'd like to discuss, please leave a comment down below and I will answer it right away. The more that you engage with this content, the more YouTube promotes the content and shares it with people just like you, and we want to help everybody. So thanks in advance for watching, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. And if you'd like to schedule a meeting with me, please click the link up here or up here. I always get that wrong. And we'll get you on the calendar right away. All right, let's get back into it. I want to bring in another report that I think really emphasizes what's going on. It's published by the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment. And the question is, do you think it's a good time to buy a home? Well, if you go back to 2020, February of 2020, 70% of people said, yes, it's a great time to buy a home. Now, if we move forward to September of 2020, it was off a little bit. It was 65%. Well, September of 2021, only 1 out of 3 people think it's a good time to buy a home. And if you ask me, I think the reason for that is that people have been misinformed about what's really happening in the real estate market. And you can watch a video I did about that, which will be up here or up here. Again, I always get that wrong. Buyers are out there shopping, they're looking at prices, and it's obvious that prices have gotten hot, but they're waiting for it to cool down. My question is, what if it doesn't? We are going to see appreciation going into next year. The biggest question that people have today is what's ahead for the 2022 housing market forecast. And I'm going to bring you that data, the expert quotes, and the insights on what's really happening right now in the real estate market. Because there's so much misinformation and so much confusion. There's so many headlines that are out there to terrify and not clarify. People are seeing these headlines and they're seeing the content about rising prices, rising rates, bubbles bursting, and all of these concerns relating to a market crash. And I get it, but I want to share data that shows exactly what's happening and help you separate out the noise. Because it's the noise and the confusion that's going to put you on the sidelines and out of the game. And I don't want you out of the game unless you want to be out of the game. So that conversation starts with mortgage rates. So let's dive right into it and look at this quote from Doug Duncan at Fannie Mae. And it says, right now we're forecasted rates to average 3.3% in 2022, which, although it's slightly higher than 2020 and 2021, by historical standards, it remains extremely low and supportive of mortgage demand and affordability. Well, what does that mean? It means we're seeing a projection for increasing mortgage rates. And we've seen that even over the last few weeks, as mortgage rates have, on average, ticked up about 3%. As mortgage rates rise, it will cost more to purchase a home. And that's exactly what we've been talking about with affordability. Mortgage rates, prices, and wages are the three levers for affordability. If the mortgage rates are projected to rise, it will cost more. But for context, I love the reference about historical standards. If mortgage rates are ticking up a little bit, it will cost more, but they will remain historically low. Based on the projections, that will support affordability, which is phenomenal news for buyers. But what's critical to understand is buying and locking in an interest rate before the mortgage rates rise even higher. And they will rise higher. Now let's take a look at what the mortgage rate data looks like. This is data from Freddie Mac, and it's the average mortgage rates going all the way back to 2018. What you can see here is that mortgage rates were roughly just under 5% in 2018. When I bought my first house, I got it at 4% and I thought I got a deal. They've dropped significantly since then. We hit that all-time low at the very end of last year. Early this year, they started to tick up again. People want to know is where are they headed? Similarly, as we saw in the quote before, you can see that Freddie Mac is saying that mortgage rates are projected to rise as well, anticipating roughly 3.6% by this time next year. Took the liberty of averaging out all the projections from all of the major players, and we see roughly 3.5% mortgage rates coming in by next year. Now, as mortgage rates get higher, it becomes more expensive to purchase a home. Which is why it's critical to understand that if you're thinking about waiting a year or two or maybe even 3, but you're ready to buy now, buying before the mortgage rates rise is mission critical to your long-term bottom line and affordability. But we know that mortgage rates aren't the only thing that are going to rise over the course of the next year. Home prices are forecasted to appreciate as well. What you're looking at here is the home forecast for 2022. We've got 6 or more major players, industry experts. They're averaging out to about 5.1% appreciation for next year, 2022. So how do we tie both of those things together? What does that really mean? Well, we've seen over the last year that home prices have appreciated at a record-breaking level. 18, 19, 20% around the country. In our market, it's 30% or more, depending on where you're at. Well, next year, the forecast is showing continued appreciation. So I don't think we're gonna see that kind of appreciation as we go into 2022, but I do think we will continue to see appreciation at a slower, more moderate rate. But make no mistake, it's appreciating. I know you've heard me use the term deceleration in some of my other videos, and that's what I expect we'll see. And it's really important that you're able to understand that home prices are expected to continue rising at a decelerated rate. And that's just a fancy way of saying slower or more moderate. But to be very clear, I don't see anything that points to, in our local market, a decline in prices. What we see is a slower rate of appreciation. What does that mean? Well, that means it's going to get more expensive to purchase a home. And if you want to buy a home, we want you to purchase that home before the home prices rise, but more importantly, before interest rates rise. Now, you may be asking yourself, why are they continuing to appreciate? Why are the analysts calling for more appreciation? Well, it's simple. That's the supply and demand conversation that we have on a daily basis here and everywhere else over and over again. It's supply and demand 101. There's very little supply and there's tremendous demand. That's going to naturally make prices rise. And the inventory situation is not something that gets solved overnight. We'll still have an inventory challenge next year. But I also expect that we're going to see a softening of that problem because we'll have builders that come back into the market building homes. That will certainly be more present in other markets outside of South Florida. In South Florida, we've pretty much developed all the land that there is to develop. So I don't really see a whole lot of new building going on. On a national level and in other markets, I expect that will happen. And then more importantly, especially in this market, we think there will be more sellers that feel far less pressure and a lot safer that are coming out of the pandemic, who are now interested in selling their home. I expect we're going to see a lot of them come back into the market if they were holding off, and a lot of new people out there considering selling too. There's a variety of factors that will play out as more homes hit the market and we start to regain some sense of normalcy in the market. Home price appreciation will ease a bit, but it will continue to rise because of the inventory situation. Now you may be asking yourself, especially if you're thinking about buying, what does that mean to me? Well, it means you should absolutely buy before prices and before mortgage rates rise to maintain that affordability. And if you're thinking about potentially selling, you may ask, what does that mean to you? Well, it means that your home equity will continue to rise, and that's a major factor to price in. Now, we've talked about the record-breaking equity over the last year, and equity will continue to rise along with home prices. But it's important that you understand, especially if you're thinking about buying something else or making your next move 2 or 3 years down the road, maybe even sometime next year. I think it's critical to do that before prices rise so that you can leverage your equity even more and make that move up or down, whatever it is that you're looking for, while you can still lock in that low interest rate and take advantage of the current home price appreciation. Equity can really drive that for homeowners. So as we're considering all of these things, mortgage rates rising, prices rising, what does that mean for home sales next year? Well, home sales are forecast to increase this year and perform well again into 2022. And what you're looking at here is the home sale forecast from 4 major entities that we follow: Fannie, Freddie, NAR, and MBA. And in 2021, it looks like roughly 6.7 to 6.9 million home sales. So it's a very, very strong year finishing out this year. And then next year, potentially even exceeding an incredible year. And the reason this is so powerful, if you look over the last year where we sold 6.5 million homes in 2020, which at the time was record-breaking, we're projected to exceed what we did in 2020 again this year and next year, which is fantastic news. And it means we will have a strong spring. And based on everything we see, we anticipate the forecast is going to be very strong going forward. In a nutshell, 2022 should be another strong year for the housing market. This is a quote from the Mortgage Bankers Association, and it's a great setup for what's ahead based on what the data is saying right now. Experts are saying 2022 has the potential to be a great year. It's really important to understand the power of taking advantage of what's available today, right now, buying before prices and interest rates rise, making a decision to make the move up or into your first home or downsize or whatever it may be before the end of the year, before things start to take off on the interest rate side. The last year, many of us have worked from our home. I mean, during the lockdown, everybody had to work from home. At least most people had to work from home. Different states, different regulations, which were lifted at different times. People across the country have placed a new meaning and a new view on their home during the pandemic. I mean, everybody had to figure out how to work, how to educate their kids, how to do what they need to do from home. With prices rising and interest rates rising, it's going to cost more for a new opportunity and a new lifestyle and a new home. I think it's important that we start talking about the non-financial benefits of home ownership. We're seeing a different trend than we previously saw in this country. Don Layton from Harvard University out there and said home ownership is regarded as causing an improvement in the quality of life of a typical family. It is the most common method for such a family to build wealth. And that can be used for so many things: tax benefits, retirements, other needs, including helping the next generation. And he goes on to say, such wealth creation therefore provides a major social as well as economic benefit. Now, I've been talking a lot over the last year about the economic benefits with rising prices and equity rising across the country. Unison just did a report on the state of the American homeowner. The 2021 State of the American Homeowner said this: 64% of American homeowners say living through the pandemic has made their home more important than ever to them. I probably didn't need a published report to know that. No doubt all of us could probably say or relate to that on some level. It's certainly been true to me. I've had to work at home, I've had to educate my kids at home, I've had to work out at home, I've had to learn how to do everything from home, including entertain myself. I mean, the list goes on and on, but it's become more important. 83% of homeowners say that their home kept them safe during the pandemic. There's no doubt that the value of a home has taken on new meaning for folks. 91% of homeowners say they feel secure or stable or successful owning a home. I can tell you confidently that homeowner and the non-financial benefits of home ownership are growing, and here's why. And I'd ask you to think back to 2010. Think about what it was like back then in our country. There were plenty of people out there that felt they no longer think that the American dream is to own a home. So many people had lost value in their homes during the recession or the Great Recession, the housing crisis, and nobody wants to experience that. Certainly not the young people who saw their parents go through that. That generation did not want to own a home. Today, things are happening a lot differently coming out of this crisis and out of the pandemic. There's no doubt that coming out of the pandemic, and now I'm not suggesting that we're fully out of it by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a lot more in the rearview mirror than there was before. Owning a home has become much more important, much more of a priority than it's ever been before. And I think that question will come up as we go into the next couple of months and into the holidays. There's going to be people out there that ask, when is the market going to crash? And the truth is, I don't know, and neither does anybody else. I absolutely don't see any sign of it happening anytime soon. So I'd counter that by asking, do you think that owning a home is becoming more important or less important to people? Do you think more people want to buy a home today or less people want to buy a home today? In the report, it says last year, staying home became a necessity, which caused many homeowners to have a renewed gratitude for the roof over their head. And there's no doubt that that was caused by the pandemic. Home, safety, and lifestyle became a priority. And that gratitude is something I've never really seen before. And it's become way more important to people everywhere across the country. In that study, homeowners that feel emotionally attached to their home before the pandemic was 58%. Today, that number is 70%, which is a huge rise in the number of people that say they feel more attached to their home after going through it in the pandemic. Mark Fleming from First America says, buying a home is not just a financial decision, it's also a lifestyle decision. So as we wrap up the year and go into next year, there are many people out there thinking, my home has become more important to me, yet my needs have changed. We got through the pandemic and now we've got options. We want more from our home and our lifestyle. Don't be afraid by the confusion or the misinformation and lose the opportunity now. Always make the best decision for yourself, for your family, for your lifestyle, and for your financial bottom line. Do whatever is right for you, but ensure that you arm yourself with the truth, which I'll always bring you. I hope you enjoyed my video and I hope you found it valuable. If you did, please let me know in the comments down below, give it a thumbs up, and be on the lookout for my next video, which will populate up here towards the end of the screen. Are you thinking about moving to Florida? Please let me know down in the comments. We love living in Florida and suspect that you will too. But the truth is, demand is so high and inventory is so low that if you want to live here, you must contact me now. You can do that by clicking the link up here. Homes go very fast. There is no time to waste. As a local expert, I typically know what's coming on the market before it even hits the MLS. And once it does, it's typically way too late to get involved. Over the last few years, we've helped hundreds of people buy and sell homes right here in South Florida, and we absolutely love it. As 40-year Florida residents, we know all the best places to fit your desired lifestyle and budget. So if you're even thinking about moving to Florida, you've got to contact me now. Call, text, DM, send a carrier pigeon, a smoke signal, by any means necessary, because we've got your back when it comes to moving to or living in South Florida. And until next time,